Bill, a Shawano native and graduate of Bonduel High School, earned his degree in economics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1969. Shortly after, he served in the U.S. Army from 1969 to 1971, including a year stationed in Vietnam. Bill and his wife Natalie have 2 sons and are proud grandparents to 4 grandchildren. Over the course of the distinguished business career, he's held leadership roles at several prominent companies, including Fort Howard Paper Company, Philip Morris, Wisconsin Tissue Mills, Chesapeake Consumer Products, Georgia Pacific, Anchor Foods, and Grey York Corporation, where he ultimately retired as the CEO. Bill, welcome. We are really excited to hear your presentation this evening, and thanks everyone for coming out.
Am I live? All right, I'm live. Well, I want to say this before Rick chimes in. That might be a 9-9 for him, it's a 3-wood for me. It's a little bit of, but it's not far. It's right on the edge over here, so, but a good 3-wood would definitely get me there. Well, welcome, this is great. The last time I had a group this large come to show up for one of my talks, I think I had free beer. So Natalie, you didn't offer free beer to these people, did you? So, okay, well that's good to know. Well, welcome, it's really good to have you here. First, a couple of thank yous. Katie Stilp, she is really good. She's really been helpful, helped me research some of the companies, and just does a very accommodating job. So thank you, Katie. I'll give her a hand. I tried to recruit her to come to Great Northern, but she wouldn't leave the library, so I struck out on that one. But also Matt Schmidt here. Matt is my anchor man here. He actually did the video that you'll see a little bit later for Bob and Joan Follett, which is, I think you're really going to enjoy it. They were the founders of Anchor Foods. And Matt's done that. He's a technology guy. That's not my strength, so thank you for doing that. And if anything goes wrong, blame him, not me. Well, hey, good to have you here. I did write a book shortly after retiring as the CEO of Great Northern some years ago. And it's a small book. I have never really published it in terms of like Amazon or anything. My son's got a printing business, so he prints them for me. And he's paying off his college debts. 30 years late, but it's, hey, sometime better than nothing. So I get a good deal on the books, and I think I do at least. I'm not sure, but it's a pretty good deal. So anyhow, I wrote this book really to kind of capture a pretty fun and exciting life and career that I've been blessed to have, starting with really growing up on the farm, as the book says, spending time in a lot of different business situations, including Wall Street, which is quite a jump from the farm to Wall Street, and then grounded back here in the Valley for the last many years. Live in Menasha, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you tonight. So the title is the Farm to Wall Street book. Someone must have got a copy of the book and told the society that this would be a speaker topic. I'm not sure how they got it. The person is anonymous. We'll find out if he acknowledges who he is, if it's depending on how the talk goes, I guess. But like I said, I haven't really done a lot of. I've had a couple of book signings actually, but my book signings are a little different. Normally, at a book signing, people go there and after the signing, they buy the book. Well, in my case, I pay people a little money to take it with them, so it's kind of a different kind of scenario. But I'll often serve beer as well. I had 7 people show up last time, but that was pretty good. Unfortunately, it's the same 7 every time, and love seeing some of these guys are there every time. But so anyhow, that's the title, and really the focus, though, that I really want to talk about, because this is for the Historical Society, and not just about me. I know the concept, if you go into these the speaker series, is heavily on local businesses and enterprises. So I want to talk about really the 4 local businesses that I've had the incredible privilege of leading over the course of my career. Artfaire, or Chesapeake Consumer Products, Wisconsin Tissue in Menasha, and 2 Appleton companies, Anchor Foods and Great Northern. So pretty blessed. Next slide, please. So a couple of underlying themes here. As you'll see in a minute, the kind of the demise of the small farm. And again, from a historical sense, it's a pretty amazing transition that's taken place over the years in the farming world. Paper industry consolidation, it obviously affected me, and in fact I moved around a lot because of some of that. But most importantly is the entrepreneurship that you'll see in these 4 companies, and something that I personally really cherish and admire. People that put it all on the line. Home mortgage, part of the collateral for a business expansion, those kind of things. And that is what has happened in several of these companies. So this was the farm that I grew up on. Looks pretty big, but this was a very typical farm back in the 1940s, 1950s. About 100 acres, 30 dairy cows, chickens, horses, the whole bit. We had it all, roosters, everything. It was all there. So this is, again, where I grew up. It's located about 40 miles north to Bonduelle, and then 8 miles to the east, between 2 significant metropolises, Zachau and Advance. Anybody ever heard of those towns? Okay, all right. Well, back in the day when I was growing up in the 50s, they were really thriving. They were about 25, 30 people each, you know. And that was a big deal to go into town. I mean, I'd have to take off my work shoes and everything to go into town, into those 2 metropolises. But we would go there and we would spend time. At Zachau was much more progressive, though. They had 3 taverns, and Advance only had 1. So you can see they were really into it. But if you want to go to the next slide, the one in Advance is surviving today. This is still there. That's the original tavern. It was Ernie's Bar back then when I was frequenting it in the time when I was 10 years old, and with my dad. And today it's, Take a Chance in Advance. Isn't that novel? How about that? So I visited there about 2 months ago, and I actually got in a card game with these guys. These are the local boys, and I was really insulted, though, because they accused me of being a city slicker, you know. And how can you do that? I mean, I grew up right next door to these guys. I went to this place long before a lot of these guys did, and I live in Menasha, which is the mecca of blue-collar workers, you know. So city slickers are not my kind of people, but that's what these guys felt I deserved. So, but anyhow, I took some money playing cards from them, so I was happy with the whole thing. I showed them I could still play sheephead, even though they had me outnumbered. So, but that was kind of one of the things amazingly to me is going back and you see the evolution of what's happened in the farm communities and how it's all changed, and I'll get into that in a minute. But back to the farm, I could talk several fun stories about growing up on the farm in the 1950s. My dad was born in 1899. He was a second-generation farmer. He had a sixth grade education, but he was probably one of the sharpest business people that I've ever known, and he was really an excellent farmer. I was born in 1946, so when I was in the younger days, you know, the expectation was, well, okay, this is a good guy to take over the farm. Well, it turns out, and if this may be good or bad for me, I'm not sure which, but I had a bad case of asthma as a kid. So I'd be in the chicken coop, cleaning the chicken coop, and I couldn't breathe, so I'd come running out, and my dad, this was before I was diagnosed, he'd say, well, what are you, a lazy bum? Get back in there, you know? So it was a constant churning of getting into and out of the chicken coop. But it turns out that obviously I didn't go out to the farming route. we'll talk about that in a few minutes. One incident I want to just talk about a little bit because it comes back to play in a later part of my career. It was kind of a turning point in some respects. But I was, when I was about 8 or 9, I would go into the barn probably 4 or 5 times a day. And there was the nastiest chicken rooster in the world. And that sucker would, every time I'd go in, he would nail me. He would grab hold of me and peck on my legs, and it was bad. I mean, this was terrorism in its beginning stages right there. I'd go to my dad and say, why don't we have this guy for dinner? This would be a perfect chicken dinner for us. And he said, you're afraid of a little chicken? Well, yeah, right. That damn little chicken didn't bother him because he knew he would be in the damn coop real quick. But I was living in fear of this damn thing. But one day, I always would go out there with a stick, and I'd poke him and get him the heck away from me best I could. But one day I forgot my stick, and he cornered me in a corner, and I was sitting in this corner, and right here was the bullpen with a big bull in it, and here was the wall. So my alternative was to jump in with the bull in the bullpen. That wasn't a good one. So I had to face this damn rooster, and all I could picture is this rooster just lining up, ready to get me. Eyes were red, his beak, I don't know, can a rooster smile? But I could swear, I would swear he was smiling. And he was just ready, and he came at me and took his time. I'm just sitting there in terror. And I closed my eyes. You ever see a kid, a baseball player who never got a hit in his life, closed his eyes, and he took a hard swing, and he just caught it and hit a home run? Well, I closed my eyes. I took the biggest kick you could ever imagine, and I caught that sucker right here. And he did a triple backflip. That was perfect. Crystal, you would put him on your gymnastics team right there. I mean, that was good. But I really, after that, this rooster was mine. I mean, I really ruled the roost. My dad came by and he said, well, that was pretty good, And he wasn't much for giving out compliments, I want to tell you that. But we had a lot of good times on the farm. I really enjoyed it all, and it was great. Also, if you want to go to the next one, I went to 8 classes, 1-room school. Anybody else go to any of those? You did? All right, there's a couple. All right, well, one of the highlights of my life was in the 6th grade. I was the salutatorian, number 2. There were 2 of us in the class. They closed the school after that year, and we consolidated into Bonduelle. And I was really excited. I was disappointed really that they closed it because my cousin, who was number 1, was moving away, and I thought I had a really good shot at being a valedictorian. But that didn't happen. So I ended up in Bonduelle, and then I was just one of 50 kids, but this is where I went. It's still there. There's still a bell up there, and it's in pretty disarray, but it's there, and that was the place where I went. I'm going to do the next slide. This is, and I had to do something historical for this group here, so you got to have a chart. But this one shows the number of dairy farms by year in Wisconsin. And as you can see, in 1940, which was kind of the peak for the small dairy farm, and each year it peeled back to now like 5,000, which is pretty amazing. But what's also amazing is that those 5,000 produce about the same amount of milk as the 187,000 did back then. That's the huge local farms that are out there today. Just amazing how it really accumulated over time and how this all took place. But in about 1960, my dad, again, who I said he was born in 1899, so he was getting into his 70s, and I was going off to college at the time. We were after he was close to retiring or selling the farm. He ended up having to sell the farm, and it was a tough time, really tough. First of all, the market was lousy. Look, you can see that there was a lot of farms for sale, just a bad time to be selling. And he was really distressed. I mean, he was literally having a nervous breakdown or a breakdown at the time. So he ended up selling that beautiful farm you saw there for $20,000. That was it. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Now that would be equivalent to about $180,000 in today's dollars. but still, that's nothing. I mean, you think of land, good farmland today will sell for $60,000, $80,000 an acre. So it's pretty incredible what was all going down. But I'll never forget it, and this really was impactful to me, was he sold the farm, and then they have an auction. So everything that this man lived with his entire life, every cow, every piece of equipment was being auctioned off like a little piece of nothingness, you know. And I'll never forget, he kind of disappeared, and he was behind the silo throwing up and crying. And it's still to this day, just to see this wonderful man who never missed one of my ball games and always was there for me, to go through this kind of situation. And all I could do was put my arm around him and say, hey, it's tough stuff. But that's kind of how this whole thing evolved in the sale of the farm. At that point, though, I made a commitment to myself that he was just an excellent businessman, not just a farmer, if you will, farmer/businessman. And I just made my commitment to myself that, gee, I can't run your farm for you with the asthma and everything else. I would have loved to have spared him having to go through this whole thing. But, you know, I'm going to, this was a commitment to myself, I'm going to show myself that I can run a business and that I can create a really dynamic team that can be a special environment for people. So that kind of was my takeaway from all that, and kind of the next evolution of where we went from here. So with that, we can go to the next one. I'll get into the career path here. I started out, first of all, I graduated from college in 1969, as was mentioned. I worked for a little bit in Milwaukee, waiting to be drafted, actually. I knew I was going to get drafted, so I got a temporary job. And that's where I met Natalie. And when I got back from Vietnam, a couple weeks later, we got married. We've been married 54 years. She's my partner, my buddy, and yeah. When I was off doing crazy stuff, she was there raising the kids, and fortunately they turned out pretty good, and it's got to be her because I was never around. So I did show up for their baseball games, so I was real consistent on that one. But we've had a good life, and we've been very blessed to have the kids and the grandkids and everything else. So, but thank you for all the support and help along the way. We moved to Milwaukee later on, and then back to Menasha, and I spent 2 years in Georgia. So it was a pretty crazy career path going forward, and a lot of time on the road. So anyhow, after I got back from Vietnam, my first job, real job, was with Fort Howard Paper Company up in Green Bay. Big company, a tissue industry leader. They were a public company. So, and it was great. Started off really in the entry level. I was a customer service guy. I loved it. I spent a lot of time with customers, with salespeople, and learned the product line. I mean, you can't ask for a better start to a career. I really enjoyed it. But about 3 years into it, and I had gone back while I was working, I got my MBA from University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. So I had a finance MBA, and we got a new CFO came in, and he was looking for somebody that knew the business but would work with him in the financial area. So I joined him in that area, moved out of my customer service role, which I didn't like to do. But I became part of the finance group, and didn't know much about finance, but he taught me a lot. It was a public company, so each quarter we would go to Wall Street and present the company's results and be a part of that. So that was pretty cool. First time I was in downtown Manhattan, lower Manhattan at Wall Street, I was thinking, now, this is a long way from Zocco, Wisconsin. A long way. And I think I probably looked like I was from Zocco, Wisconsin, too, back then. But we got through that, and I was really enjoying that as well. In fact, I loved every job I was in. It's amazing. I can't imagine how people can not have such fulfilling jobs, but obviously it happens. But anyhow, I knew I was there about like 9 years total, And I knew that I could stay there. I would have had a wonderful career, very content, very happy, everything would have been good, but it didn't fill that need. I had told myself that I was going to run a business and create a really dynamic team. So I saw an ad in the paper for a financial business analyst in the Milwaukee market under the title of Philip Morris Industrial. They were the industrial branch of the cigarette company Philip Morris, the cigarette beer mega corporation, billions of dollars. But this was a smaller division that originally started out making cigarette papers and stuff like that. And over time, it took on its own life and became involved in a lot of different companies. One of the companies, interestingly enough, that they had acquired was Wisconsin Tissue. So being a Fort Howard tissue guy, I said, oh, this is kind of cool. I might tie in with them someday, not thinking for sure how it was going to happen. But there were also 12 other companies also in this Philip Morris Industrial Group. So I got to work with various companies. We spent different times. We did some acquisitions. I spent more time at Wall Street. So it was really, really a great job as well. And one of the things that we did as part of that is we put together a proposal to put a $100 million investment into Wisconsin Tissue. This was back in the very early 80s. They were a very small napkin converting business at the time. So they really were in the minor league, if you will, of the tissue industry. Well, it turns out that this whole thing was getting approved by the corporate board of Philip Morris. And they were doing a presentation in Wall Street to a number of investors. Not on our investment was one of them, but there were multiple investments. But they asked me to be a part of this presentation. And here it was, the top guy at Philip Morris, probably making $10 million a year, and I was making $25,000, if that. But it was pretty cool that I got to be a part of that. And one of the question guys, he was a city slicker, but he came after me. He was really trying to grill me and get more information about the tissue industry. I mean, I wasn't going to tell him a lot because there's various confidential things and so forth. But this guy literally got in my face, and he thought he was going to really put me down. All I could see was those two red eyes and that beak, that stinking smiling beak looking at me. And all of a sudden, I just really got back at him, right back in his face, and we just had a real go to it, and actually, I knew a hell of a lot more about the industry than this clown did. So I came out really good on that one. But interestingly, after that session, this president, the CEO of Philip Morris, big time, came up to me and said, hey, I really thought you handled that guy well. Congratulations. And, oh, thank you. And he said, what's in your career path? And I said, well, I plan to run a business, and I want to create a really energized team. And he said, oh, okay. 1 month later, I was transferred to Wisconsin Tissue as their vice president of marketing, and it led ultimately to what I'll go into a few minutes here. But I think it was probably in the works already, but it makes a real good story, that thing that this guy. But the fact is, a lot of people have had a lot of successes, even more modest start points than me, bigger accomplishments and so forth, but I really doubt if too many of these people had a catalyst of a barnyard rooster. So that is a claim I will forever hold as a banner. So anyhow, I spent some time there, so we can move on, please. So just a little bit about industry consolidation. I won't spend a lot of time here. We've got a lot to cover. But just one company alone, Fort Howard, a tissue company up in Green Bay you may or may not have heard of. They were the industry leader in, away from home tissue products. But they acquired Fort James and became Fort James when they acquired James River, that should say, became Fort James, yeah. And then they were acquired by Georgia Pacific, and then Georgia Pacific's tissue business was acquired by the Koch brothers. So one example of the kind of churning and the kind of movement that was going on in the paper industry over those years. And it certainly affected me and a lot of other people in terms of the positioning. If you want to go to the next one. So that was Philip Morris Industrial. I talked about them. Go to the next one, please. So Wisconsin Tissue. So there I am at Wisconsin Tissue now in marketing. We got this approval of this $100 million expansion, and we really got on the map. This is where we built the high rise that you see off of 41, and really put in a couple paper machines and really got the tissue, got the Wisconsin Tissue business into the big leagues. It was really fun. And I eventually became their CFO. So you talk about someone that was both a VP of marketing and a CFO. Now that's schizophrenia, if you ever heard of it, you know. Not too many people have done both of those things, and I don't know how I did it, but I was there. But anyhow. So anyhow, there, and I was part of Chesapeake then had acquired Wisconsin, had acquired the old Philip Morris Industrial business. So Chesapeake Corporation out of Virginia was now ahead of it. And they wanted to grow the tissue business at Wisconsin Tissue. So they bought a company called, at the time was called Artfaire. And they asked me to lead that company. So it was a division of Wisconsin Tissue, Chesapeake Corporation at the time. So that became Chesapeake Consumer Products. So this was now my first role as the top of a company, leading it as a president of that company. And sometimes beware of what you wish for. Those first year and a half were ugly, if you want to say it nicely. We were in this strategy of trying to sell these napkin products into the retail market. We thought we could do it with a lower cost and people would be excited. They, you know, the designs may not be quite as cool as some of the other ones, but we thought it would really work. It didn't. And we had a whole raft of inventory, and I was, as my first role as the president, I was really slow to move. You got to make mid-course corrections, and I learned a very significant lesson real early in that. But fortunately, after about a year and a half of struggling and being beat up, and I thought my career was over in my first go-round, we turned it around. We got the Simpsons, if you ever remember the Simpsons contract, so we did that. We got into some other areas of the business. A fellow by the name of Brian Hollenbach joined me as my CFO, and he became the number 2 guy at Green Bay Packaging later on. But we turned it around, and about 3 years into it, I got a call from the Chesapeake folks saying that Sal Cianciola, who some of you may know, he was a big Lawrence guy. He was the president of Wisconsin Tissue. He was retiring, so they asked me to come back and be the president of Wisconsin Tissue. So this was a pretty big deal. I mean, I really had, Chesapeake Consumer Artfaire was about 120 employees, something like that. This was, 1,000 plus employees. So it was a great opportunity to lead that neat company. And if you want to go to the next one. Just a little bit quickly on Artfaire, a couple of quick interesting things. It was originally Tuttle Press. Is anybody familiar with Artfaire here? Okay. They were an Appleton company located on Perkins Street. Wisconsin Tissue Paper Company, interesting, that's not the Wisconsin Tissue Mills. That was a whole different company that was located here in Appleton. They used to make machine equipment. And they enticed this Tuttle Press to move from Illinois to Wisconsin. So that was the beginnings of that business. And it had various owners, some local, and renamed Artfaire in the 1990s. The Hancock location was part of that was the gift wrap side of the business. That was separate, and that was sold off, and then eventually we acquired them, and they later became later were sold to Hoffmaster and finally merged and Perkins closed. So that was Artfaire. If you want to go to the next one. I've got a little model that I've used. I've taught some courses at UW-Oshkosh in strategy, and basically it's very simple, but you got to have the right strategy. Execution and culture have to really come together to create a successful enterprise. And we were all screwed up. We had the wrong strategy. We were trying to sell retail products in a commercial kind of environment. and the execution culture was kind of mixed between an artsy side, an Artfaire, and a production side at Wisconsin Tissue. So it was pretty screwed up. But anyhow, that was what happens when you don't have those three elements in sync. So back to Wisconsin Tissue, I came in and we had a great thing going. We grew the thing, we got another paper machine added, and we acquired 3 or 4 companies, so I got to go back to Wall Street to do some acquisitions. They were smaller companies because we couldn't afford the big paper machine, but we got a really good team going, and it was really, really clicking. That went very, very well. And then one day it happened. I literally, about 2 weeks before the actual transaction took place, Chesapeake had a new CEO. And he was a packaging guy, and his vision was to have an international packaging business. So he made an arrangement with Georgia Pacific to sell Wisconsin Tissue. And I was not even aware of this going on until literally 2 weeks before it was made public. So we were sold, became part of Georgia Pacific. And this was a tough one for me. This was close to my dad going through what he went through selling the farm, because I really, really loved the company and really was engaged in it totally. But we became a part of that major corporation. Do you want to go to the next one? Just a little bit about Wisconsin Tissue, founded by the Azimuth family, a real entrepreneurial type company to start with as well. You may have heard Jim Azimuth. His wife was killed in a robbery thing, so big issue here in the local valley. But eventually it just evolved and became a significant player in the tissue industry. So that all took place, and then finally when we were combined with Georgia Pacific, I was picked to run Georgia Pacific's combined away-from-home tissue business. They had a portion of their own, and plus the Wisconsin Tissue side. So we had a pretty substantial business. And I was in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, for about 2 years as part of this transition. I never physically moved, but spent a lot of time down there. And that's where we really combined the two businesses together, and it was really going well. But I was planning on leaving. I didn't want to move to Atlanta, Georgia, even though it was pretty cool to live in an apartment in Buckhead. Not all that shabby, actually. But I did, and I had a hard time getting back for the baseball games and stuff. So, but I made most of them. Natalie was pretty happy that I was gone, I think, but it worked out fine. But anyhow, I was about 2 weeks away from putting in my resignation. I was going to leave, and I didn't have anything lined up at all. But I happened to be at a Cisco trade show, and Scott Follett, one of the Follett sons, as part of Anchor Foods, came up to me, and this is pretty amazing really, and said, "Hey, would you like to run our company?" Talking about Anchor Foods. And I says, "Well, yeah, I would like to do that." I mean, this is seriously, this is exactly how that happened. So 1 month later, I was the CEO of Anchor Foods, and left in good standing with Georgia Pacific, but I was glad to be out of there. They had 67 lawyers, way too many lawyers, even though my son is one. Yeah, way too many lawyers. So I got the heck out of there. And that became part of the next facet of my career now, joining a great local company, Anchor Foods. Totally different than the tissue industry. I mean, tissue industry is pretty straightforward. These guys were crazy. I mean, they were throwing, Kate will talk about this, but they were throwing poppers off the balconies and all kinds of crazy stuff. But it was fun, I gotta say that. You know, here's people that just put their lives on the line, mortgaged whatever, and got the loan, built the buildings. Scott came around and got these jalapeno poppers popping. I mean, that was amazing. And I wasn't there at the time. I came in later as part of, actually in that case, it was intentionally, we were going to really build a company up so we could ultimately sell it, which we did, which really worked out well. But this is a truck here, And we have the young lady who was stationed in this truck for what, 3 years, 3 years, selling out of this truck, doing demos and everything else. Kate Burgess, who's an accomplished business person in her own right. She is the CEO of Elevate 96, is that right? 97, that's close. One up. She has incredibly built that business and has got a lot of other things going, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I'd like to have her talk a little bit about those early days and how this whole thing evolved as time wore on. So Kate, please. Thank you.
Well, first of all, it is definitely an honor to be here this evening and spending time with Phil, hearing his story, hearing where he came from, seeing Natalie, and just sharing a little bit more about Anchor Food Products. I joined Anchor Foods in 1994. It was actually May of 1994, and my first job with them was in national sales. I came on board, I was a Marquette University grad working in Milwaukee and was recruited by Scott to come on board as one of his sales reps. And our first big show was down in Chicago called the National Restaurant Show, the NRA show. And we were sampling those jalapeno poppers. We were having fun in our 10-foot booth at the time. And as a recap, we came back to Anchor after the show, and Scott, full of energy and excitement about what these jalapeno poppers were doing for their business, he's like, got an idea. And literally, I'm only a few weeks into my role, and he's like, what if we had a retired couple go around the United States training people how to sell our jalapeno poppers? Go to the Cisco distributors of the world, go to the restaurants, go to the universities, and let's go sell appetizers. And so this is May. I'm getting married in September. I am 26 years old, and I'm like, a retired couple? How about a couple that's just getting married in September? I was so excited, you guys, and certainly Scott's energy, along with his father, Bob, and his brother, Mark, it was very contagious. And I ran into his office, and I said, Scott, I want you to meet my future husband, Tom. We are high school sweethearts, and Tom is also in the sales area in Milwaukee, but would you by chance consider having us go and get our CDLs and go travel around the United States? Within a couple of months, Tom was hired, and we helped actually build the inside of the vehicle, which was a full commercial kitchen, and it also had over 14 different desks. So the idea was that one of us was in the kitchen prepping those jalapeno poppers and those famous mozzarella sticks and onion rings. The other one was presenting. So we had distributor sales reps come through the vehicle, and we would give approximately about an hour and a half presentation. And the focus was how to excite them about Anchor Food Products, about the innovation that Anchor was bringing to the food service industry. And once they left and were sampling all the products while they were sitting inside, once they left, they would leave with a freezer bag full of frozen samples and then go door to door to share with all of the restaurants in their area as well as with the universities. And it went crazy. We basically did a guerrilla marketing aspect for 2.5 years. The first year, it was so successful that the Follets came back and said, we're willing to invest in another tractor trailer and have 2 on the road. So they put two trucks on the road. It was a project that lasted for well over 3 years. And now going back to the NRA show, we didn't have an 8 or in a 10-foot booth anymore. We actually brought the full sales truck to the NRA show. So when Bill was saying that we were throwing poppers off the top of, a building, it was off the top of the sales drive draw and creating a lot of excitement and energy at the NRA. And truly, the sales that we had experienced during that time, so this was 1994 through 1997, was unbelievable. Uh, it was so successful, it then led us into the whole retail segment. So then one of the sales drive trucks was actually dedicated specifically to retail. So we had one for food service, and then we had one to the retail side of the business. Um, Hearing, specifically from Bob Follett, who started Anchor Food Products here at Appleton, you hear his words, you hear about his values and what they wanted to do for other people. That's what the company was made of. And when we had the opportunity of having Bill come on to Anchor Foods and help lead that organization, the connection was all about what Bill mentioned. And that goes back to the grassroots of where Bill grew up, being on that farm, a dig in no matter what it takes attitude to make things happen. And that continued the full momentum of Anchor Foods. Bill's values, talking about integrity, talking about delivering, was unbelievable. It was that triangle that he talked about with the success of a business, the whole leadership, the strategy, but the most important aspect was about the people that worked at Anchor Food Products. I was fortunate enough to work directly on Bill's leadership team. I was in the sales and marketing side, but Bill had a position that he was looking at for human resources. My discipline from school and at Marquette was in the sales and marketing side, but when Bill first approached me, it was something that I was not comfortable with, but I knew he believed in me and I believed in him, and I knew he would put me in a position that I hoped to add value with his leadership team. And, he made that promise to his dad in his heart and soul, saying, I want to build a business. I want a dynamic leadership team surrounding him. That's Phil. He did exactly that. And he helped make Anchor Food Products what it was before we sold to McCain Foods. That family-owned business, the entrepreneurship was incredible. So the time I was able to spend with Bill, I felt like I was getting a master class right there. My 2 years right underneath his direction, watching how he cared about people, everybody had a voice at the table. He pulled people in. He listened to them. That's what helped make the success of Anchor Food Products. And then the opportunity to be with him when we presented to multiple companies throughout the United States and obviously Canada, where we sold to McCain Foods, was an experience in itself. But it comes down to integrity. What he was delivering for the Fowletts and what he delivered for the employees, quite remarkable and extremely special. And I feel very honored to have the opportunity of working underneath Bill, because that then went to my husband, who did not stay on at Anchor Food Products. He actually started our business out of our garage in 1997. And I then ended up joining him in 2002 after the company was sold to McCain. I then joined my husband, Tom, and we have a business that now is 28 years and doing really well. We work with a lot of international grants in the retail segment. And what I learned, though, at the days underneath Bill and the Follett family about people, about having a culture that's intentional and really caring about them and having a Harvard Door family, truly helped make the success of what I've experienced at my own business of Elevate 97. So with that, I want to thank you, Bill. Thank you for all that you have shared with me and with so many other people aside of Anchor Food Products and other businesses.
Thank you. Thank you. One little quick sub-story there. When we were presenting our company to all these analysts, it was in Chicago at a fancy hotel. Kate how old was your baby at that point? About 4 weeks. Natalie came along, and she was babysitting her 4-week baby while we were presenting all these things and throwing poppers around to all these people. I mean, that's pretty amazing. This lady, you talk about someone that is a team player, just giving up your normal career path to work with us and being the cultural leader of the company was pretty amazing. And I thank you. You made a difference, and it was pretty cool. She's very accomplished. She's on the your Packer board, right? I really am jealous about that. She's on the Packer board. I'm not, but I'm told anyhow. But she was very much involved in the recent draft thing. You were on the committee that was right under Mark Murphy, right? And that's pretty cool. So maybe if we have time, she can tell us about that whole thing. But one last quick thing about Anchor. When the company was sold, the Follett family gave each person, each employee, didn't matter what kind of a position, but $1,000 for each year of their employment. And that they were 95% of them still had their jobs, so this was just on top of that. And so there's some, you imagine we had a lot of Hmong folks, people there 20 years, and these folks getting $20,000 and still having a job. And that's the kind of people that the Folletts were, and that's pretty amazing. So let's move on. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it. We hit it on all 3 cylinders there. That was big. Let's go on to the next one. Great Northern, now another great entrepreneurial company. With that, I'll introduce John Davis. Just one quick second. We also have Dan Brown back there, who is Bob's son, a longtime GNC employee. Thank you, Dan. These guys were really special. I mean, I was very blessed to be able to join them and be part of the team. But John Davis followed me as a CEO of Great Northern when I retired. He then, when he retired 2 years ago, became chairman of the board, but it booted me out of that role, so I'm now just on the board, but it's all good. I'm blessed to be there. John Davis.
Yeah, you can tell that the guy on the left, that was my dad, kind of the smart aleck, and he's a smart, funny guy, and yeah, he always gets the last word, so I believe in that. When I watch that, I always think about as companies are striving to have right kind of culture and right kind of ways to attract employees. Currently that's a big issue. These guys were talking in 2012 at our 50th anniversary, and really talking about how they run the company since its inception. So it's pretty incredible to hear two gentlemen talking about that kind of culture and what they wanted to have for the team, for the employees, and think now, fast forward, how hard companies are working to attract employees, creating a place where folks are going to be listened to, their ideas are really appreciated and pursued, that they have a chance to be an entrepreneur, they have a chance to be recognized, they have a chance to be a stockholder, to be a part of a profit-sharing client, really be inside and knowing what's happening with the business, just makes tremendous difference. And these guys were fantastic at it. Hopefully you have a sense of why there was a great fit for Bill and all of this, and I'll get to that see. But what brought Jim and Bob to this area? My dad was he's actually a best man at his wedding. He's working for Marathon Paper, and I don't know if you remember Marathon Paper here, Foley Cardenas, and so he had a great training program. He was attracted to that. American Can bought him in 1957, and suddenly the game was changing, and all the top performers were being asked to move to Stanford or St. Louis or somewhere else. And he looked at Bob and said, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. And Bob was in the packaging business. And so they met one night at a holiday party at Jerry Beaumere's house. Jerry Beaumere and Bob Jones, a Struggle Law Firm. He was their attorneys. And they were talking about what it might take to start a business. My dad is going, we're going to need a plant, we're going to need equipment, we're going to need trucks, we're going to need a great team, we're going to need all of those financing, all the legal help. And Bob just saying, Jim, we're going to need customers. So that was how they divided up the work for us for the next 50 years. And Bob was out really close to, he was working on the beer boxes at the time, so he was in packaging for food products, cheese, And my dad just loved the idea of the tactical side of one business, so that was their partnership for many years. They talked about at one point, what might be happening next for the business, but that was preceded by some of the work that I was doing. Myself and Jim Chacoin thought it was a good idea to readjust our customer mix in the 90s, and we made a call on Bill Raaths and basically fired him as a customer. We said, we got a lot of people who want our stuff. It's just you, it's just not really our mix, and you understand, it's a strategy thing. I still remember saying to our friend Jim, I think this is a really bad idea. I don't think Bill was very happy about that. And we'd see him later, on the last couple of years, and now it was always just delightful and sweet. Yeah, Bill, not so much. So when I got the call from my dad in 2002, he said, I think you're okay, but maybe we really need a new kind of energy here. Yeah, so 2002, Bill joins the company, and it just was an incredible run, an incredible impact on the business. 7 years as our CEO, 13 years as the board chair, and he was gracious enough when he said, I think John's ready now. I'm going to move on to the board chair, made some room, and as he said, what we call the bloodless coup. He moved out of the board position chair, and I moved in there because, for the same reason, Jeff Michaels, who's with us here, Jeff, raise your hand. He's our CEO now, and he was right about. So that was really the transition, and I've just felt really lucky to have the time with Bill. It reminds you a lot of the kind of relationships that Jim DeBach had running the business. They were serious about the business, but they really, really had fun. And at the heart and core, they really enjoyed what they were doing for their team and what they were doing for their customers. So that kind of leads you to just, basically commenting on what Bill brought, his pyramid. That stuff really works. And in terms of GNC, be in search of the right strategy. And when he came in 2002, I think he saw immediately, this is a good team, and they have a great reputation. It's time to grow GNC. And in fact, that's exactly what his license plate said. Grow GNC. Pull in the parking lot, everyone go, okay, Bill's here to grow this business and not to sell this business. And so that's what we did. In the first 7 years, we bought 2 companies, one in Chippewa Falls, one in Minneapolis. We started a greenfield plant in Oshkosh to make a new product, joined partnership that revolutionized the box business. And that's hard to do because boxes are round and square, and they're on for 80 years. But it literally changed the business. In terms of execution, what he realized was if you build a great team of leaders, execution just happens. And I think that's what he did at GNC. Encouraged us to always be so careful about the leaders we picked and the influence it had on the rest of the team. And then finally, just the whole thing about culture. I have this book, study it a lot. And in there he talks about, don't just throw the culture out of the business. Use and leverage what's there, and clearly from the founders, I feel, really strong culture. He just enhanced it, made it more obvious, got way more deliberate about making that part of our story for our team, for our customers. So the triangle strategy worked for us and delivered some great results. Just in closing, and as Kate said, it's just a very special experience to work with Bill and to be mentored by Bill. And he was to come in and help me transition into the CEO role. That was supposed to take, like it did at Anchor, be 4 or 5 years. I'm in my 21st year, clearly unfinished product here. He says he's about halfway done with me, so I think you got another 20 years on the board. And but it's just been a wonderful experience to have Bill in my life. I have his book here. He signed this back, and when it first came out, and said, "My partner and friend, all the best, whatever you decide to do." It says, "All the best as you continue to take our company to new heights." As it was what I need to do, and continue to back because it's Bill. Thank you, my friend, my partner, and thanks for everyone for coming tonight. The Bill story.
Oh, absolutely. I prefer to hug Kate, but John is being very modest, actually. He really drove our growth. We're a $750 million company, right up here in the road here. And isn't that something? For empty boxes, that's pretty cool. But we're much more than that. We're into the displays. We're into a lot of really, really innovative and cool products and businesses. It's just great. And the culture is there. I want to tell you, it's great, even though they did fire me as a customer, which I'm still pretty ticked about that one. But I mean, how do you fire a customer? Come on, give me a break. But it all went good, and we had a great time. John is wonderful to work with. We've just really rocked, and a lot of great things. Jeff is doing a wonderful job as the next leader, and we're on a roll. The company is continuing to do extremely well, so very, very blessed. But just a couple of quick things. Work ethic, obviously you get that if you're going to be living on the farm. You know, I remember when I was in high school, I would go out, get up in the morning, help milk the cows, clean the gutter, and before I would go to school, I would change my clothes and shoes and stuff, but I would never take a shower or anything like that. Even once a week was plenty. But you know, I thought about this the other day. When I was in high school, I had very few girlfriends. I always thought it was because I was short, but there might have been something else going on there. But well, that was 60 years ago, so I forget it now. I'm not worried about it. What the heck? But you obviously develop a work ethic and basic business ethics. My dad taught me that. One time we were at the feed mill, and he was undercharged by, and I remember this exactly, $3.16. He was undercharged. And without making a big commotion, he just told the guy, hey, I was undercharged. And the guy, yeah, okay, you're right. He did this by hand. This is the sixth grade that he did by hand. And he never made a big deal to me, but I just saw it. That to me was business ethics 101, 107, 1019. But do the right thing. That's really what business ethics is all about. You don't need a 20-page dissertation. It's do the right thing. Obviously getting out of the comfort zone. Kate, my gosh, holy cow. She had this great career path, and I diverted her into a whole different thing, and she did it, and just totally excelled in it. So that's the kind of people that really make it happen. Learning from mistakes, yeah, I've done a few of those, believe me. So we hopefully can get smarter as we go along. And then finally, remembering the roots. I mean, my dad and mother, they were the best people in the world. I was very blessed to be a part of their lives, and it's been a pretty incredible journey. So thank you for coming. Really appreciate it, and hope you found it of some interest. So thank you.